The ring of remorse. The eerie creaking of floorboards echoed through the dimly lit hallway as I stumbled out of bed, my heart pounding in my chest. It was 3:33 a.m. again, the cursed hour that had plagued my nights for weeks. I rubbed my weary eyes, the weight of exhaustion pressing down on me like a suffocating blanket. Every night, without fail, I would awaken to find it there, the ring. It was her ring, the one I buried her with. A token of our love, now haunting me in the dead of night. I couldn't explain it, couldn't rationalize how it found its way onto my finger each time I woke, cold sweat clinging to my skin. I tried to remove it, to cast it away, but it clung to me like a sinister specter, a reminder of the guilt that gnawed at my soul. My footsteps faltered as I reached the hallway mirror, my reflection warped and distorted in the dim light. I stared at the ring, glinting malevolently on my finger, a silent accusation in the stillness of the night. How could I have let her go? How could I have failed her? The house groaned around me, its ancient timbers whispering secrets long forgotten. I shivered, a chill creeping up my spine as I turned away from the mirror, desperate to escape the accusing gaze of my own reflection. But there was no escape, not from the memories that haunted me, not from the ring that bound me to her. As I stumbled back towards the bedroom, the darkness seemed to close in around me, suffocating and oppressive. Shadows danced on the walls, twisting and contorting into grotesque shapes that seemed to mock my torment. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the darkness away, but it clung to me like a second skin, taunting me with whispered promises of oblivion. I collapsed onto the bed, the weight of exhaustion dragging me down into the depths of unconsciousness. But even in sleep, there was no respite, no escape from the nightmares that plagued me. I tossed and turned, caught in a maelstrom of guilt and despair, until at last, merciful oblivion claimed me. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting a pale glow over the room as I blinked away the remnants of sleep. My hand instinctively went to my chest, but there was no ring this time, no tangible reminder of the horrors that haunted my nights. I breathed a sigh of relief, fleeting though it was, as I pushed myself out of bed, determined to shake off the lingering unease that clung to me like a shroud. But as I made my way downstairs, the memories came flooding back with a vengeance, each step a painful reminder of the life I had lost. The house felt different now, somehow colder and more distant, as if it too mourned the absence of its former inhabitants. I tried to shake off the feeling of foreboding, but it clung to me like a shadow, refusing to be dispelled. I forced myself to focus on the mundane tasks of daily life, the monotony of routine providing a brief respite from the relentless onslaught of memories. But no matter how hard I tried to distract myself, her presence lingered in every corner of the house, a spectral presence that refused to be ignored. I found myself drawn to her room, the door looming ominously at the end of the hallway like a silent sentinel guarding its secrets. With trembling hands, I pushed it open, the musty scent of stale air and forgotten dreams washing over me like a tidal wave. The room was frozen in time, a snapshot of a life abruptly ended, a life that should have been mine to share. I sank to the floor, the weight of grief pressing down on me like a leaden blanket as I traced my fingers along the faded photographs that adorned the walls. Each image was a painful reminder of what I had lost, a cruel mockery of the happiness that had once been ours. But amidst the sorrow, there was something else, a whisper of something sinister lurking just beneath the surface, a feeling of unease that prickled at the edges of my consciousness. I tried to push it away, to bury it deep beneath the facade of normalcy, but it refused to be silenced, growing louder and more insistent with each passing moment. I stumbled out of the room, the walls closing in around me as I fled from the suffocating embrace of her memory. But no matter where I went, her presence followed, a presence that haunted my every waking moment. And as the day gave way to night, I knew that no amount of running could save me from the horrors that awaited me in the darkness. Night descended, casting the world into darkness as the hour approached, the dreaded hour when the veil between the living and the dead grew thin, when the whispers of the past echoed through the silence of the night. I lay in bed, my heart pounding in my chest as the minutes ticked by, each second stretching into eternity as I waited for the inevitable. And then it came, the sound of laughter, cold and cruel, echoing through the empty corridors of the house. My blood ran cold as I listened, paralyzed with fear as the laughter grew louder, more insistent, until it seemed to fill the very air around me with its malevolent presence. I stumbled out of bed, my limbs heavy with dread as I made my way towards her room, drawn inexorably towards the source of the laughter. The door loomed before me, a barrier between the safety of the present and the horrors of the past. I pushed it open, the darkness within swallowing me whole as I stepped inside. And there she was, her form illuminated by the pale moonlight that streamed through the window, her eyes alight with a creepy madness. She laughed, a sound devoid of joy or sanity, her voice echoing through the silence like a death knell. I stumbled backwards, the weight of her gaze bearing down on me like a leaden weight as I tried to make sense of the impossible. She was dead, buried deep beneath the earth, and yet here she stood before me, her presence a twisted mockery of the life we once shared. I wanted to scream, to flee from the nightmare that unfolded before me, but I was rooted to the spot, unable to tear my gaze away from her haunting visage. She advanced towards me, her laughter growing louder with each step, until it filled the room with its deafening cacophony. And then, with a suddenness that stole the breath from my lungs, she was upon me, her hands closing around my throat with a vice-like grip. I struggled against her, gasping for air as she laughed, her eyes alight with an unexplainable evil. The hour struck 3:34 a.m. and she was gone once again. But even as darkness closed in around me, I knew that this was not the end, that the horrors that awaited me in the darkness were far worse than anything I could have imagined. And as her laughter echoed through the empty corridors of the house, I knew that my fate was sealed, that I was doomed to spend eternity trapped in a nightmare from which there could be no escape. Story 2. The Haunting Message. The night was thick with shadows, and a sense of unease clung to the air like a suffocating fog. I stirred from my slumber, the darkness pressing in around me as I reached out for my wife, expecting to find her warm body beside me. But my hand met empty space, and a chill crept down my spine as I realized she was not there. Panic surged within me, my heart racing as I sat up in bed, searching the room frantically. My eyes fell upon her side of the bed, neatly made as if she had never slept there at all. A sense of dread washed over me, icy tendrils wrapping around my heart as I scanned the room for any sign of her. And then, I saw it, the soft glow of her phone on the nightstand, the screen illuminated with an eerie light. I reached for the phone, my hands trembling as I unlocked the screen and saw the message displayed there, a recording of her voice, faint and trembling, repeating the same words over and over again, "Help me, please." The words were echoing through the silence of the night like a ghostly refrain. I felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins, driving me to action as I leaped out of bed and rushed downstairs, the sound of her voice haunting me every step of the way. I searched every room of the house, calling out her name into the darkness, but there was no sign of her. Panic clawed at my chest, threatening to consume me whole as I realized she was gone, vanished without a trace into the night. I stumbled back upstairs, the weight of despair crushing me as I collapsed onto the bed, her phone still clutched tightly in my hand. I played the recording again and again, hoping for some clue, some sign of where she might be. But there was nothing, only the sound of her voice, pleading for help from some unseen horror that lurked just beyond the edge of perception. As the first light of dawn began to creep through the curtains, I knew that I could not rest until I found her, that I would search every dark corner and hidden recess until I brought her home again. But little did I know that the horrors awaiting me were far worse than anything I could have imagined. The days stretched into weeks, and still, there was no sign of her. I haunted the streets like a restless spirit, searching every alley and abandoned building for any trace of my wife. But the city remained silent, its secrets hidden behind closed doors and boarded-up windows. I returned home each night, the weight of despair pressing down on me like a leaden cloak. The recording on her phone taunted me, its haunting melody a constant reminder of the nightmare that had become my reality. I played it over and over again, hoping against all that it would reveal some hidden clue, some hint of where she might be. But each time, it was the same, a voice crying out in the darkness, lost and afraid. I felt as though I were losing my mind, trapped in a never-ending cycle of despair and longing. And then, one night, as I lay in bed, the recording began to change. At first, it was subtle, a faint distortion in her voice, a hint of something darker lurking just beneath the surface. But as I listened, the distortion grew stronger, the words becoming twisted and garbled until they were almost unrecognizable. And then, with a suddenness that stole my breath away, the recording stopped altogether, replaced by a deafening silence. I stared at the phone in disbelief, my heart pounding in my chest as I realized that something was terribly wrong. I tried to call out to her, to plead with her to come back to me, but there was no response, only the cold emptiness of the night. I knew then that I had to find her, no matter the cost. I gathered my courage and ventured out into the darkness once more, determined to uncover the truth behind her disappearance. The city seemed to close in around me, its streets twisting and turning like a labyrinth of shadows. I stumbled through the darkness, my senses on high alert as I searched for any sign of her presence. And then, just when I was beginning to lose hope, I saw it, a flicker of movement in the alley ahead. I rushed forward, my heart pounding in my chest as I rounded the corner and came face to face with her, the woman I loved, trapped in the clutches of a darkness beyond imagining. She stared at me with vacant eyes, her voice little more than a whisper as she uttered the words that would change everything. "Run," she said, her voice barely audible over the roar of the darkness that surrounded us. "Run, before it's too late." I stood frozen in place, my mind reeling as I tried to make sense of the horrors unfolding before me. My wife's words echoed in my ears, a desperate plea for salvation from a fate too terrible to comprehend. But as I looked into her vacant eyes, I knew that there was no saving her, that she was lost to me forever. And then, with a suddenness that stole the breath from my lungs, the darkness surged forward, enveloping her like a fire. I cried out in horror, reaching out for her, but she was gone, swallowed up by the abyss that lurked just beyond the edge of perception. I stumbled backwards, my heart pounding in my chest as I turned and fled into the night, the sound of her screams echoing in my ears. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs threatened to give out beneath me, the darkness nipping at my heels like a hungry beast. But no matter how fast I ran, I could not escape it, its tendrils reaching out to drag me down into the abyss. I felt myself slipping, teetering on the edge of oblivion. And then, just when I thought all hope was lost, I saw it, a glimmer of light in the distance, a beacon of hope in the sea of darkness. I pushed on with all I had, the light growing brighter with each step until at last, I emerged into the open air, gasping for breath as the darkness fell away behind me. I collapsed onto the ground, my body racked with exhaustion as I stared up at the sky, the first light of dawn painting the horizon with hues of pink and gold. And as I lay there, battered and broken, I knew that I had escaped the darkness, but at what cost? For even now, as the sun rises on a new day, I can still feel its presence lurking just beyond the edge of sight, waiting to drag me back into the abyss from which I may never escape. The end. Subscribe for more. Thank you.